Hello and welcome back as we get ready to listen to the last and the closing about the book, The Way Back to Mayberry, Lessons from a Simpler Time. Today we read the Epilogue, and the scripture that goes along with it is from 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 13 and 14. I do not want you to be ignorant, brethren, concerning those who have fallen asleep, lest you sorrow as others who have no hope. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so God will bring with him those who sleep in Jesus. In so many episodes of the Andy Griffith Show, the viewer can't help but notice the special relationship between Sheriff Andy Taylor and his son Opie. Opie's charity showed us how Andy let his pride get in the way when dealing with his young son. Andy assumed Opie was hoarding his money to buy his girlfriend Charlotte a frivolous present. But he was quickly humbled when he found out that Opie had planned to buy Charlotte a coat because her mother didn't have the money for a new one. In Opie and the Spoiled Kid, we see Andy making himself available to his son. Andy had time for Opie and did not regard his questions as foolish. He took the time to listen, and by doing so, established a relationship of trust. The episode, Mr. McBeevy, presents Andy with a challenging situation. Andy knows that Opie has an active imagination, but Opie insists that his friend, Mr. McBeevy, is not make-believe, but real. This statement is complicated by the fact that Opie describes Mr. McBeevy as being able to walk around in the trees as well as having other fantastic abilities. In a touching scene, Andy decides that he does indeed believe in Opie, regardless of how far-fetched his story seems. The Andy Griffith Show was a fictional television series, but it presented some very believable relationships in which we, the viewers, could readily identify. The love, patience, and gentle instruction that Andy provided Opie are some of the same attributes my father and grandfathers endowed to me as a young boy. And for this heritage, I am forever grateful. His hands were huge. That's the one physical characteristic I'll always remember about my dad's father. I remember being in awe of Papa when I was a kid. He was a big man. He seemed at least 7 feet tall to me. In a match with Goliath, I would have picked Papa to win. His hands seemed so big and strong that they could swallow you up. Even so, Papa was never intimidating, even to a little kid. He had such a gentle nature. I will always remember Papa working with his hands. He was truly a craftsman, always very particular and attentive to detail. He and my dad built the house I grew up in. Papa helped to finish most of the interior of our house. He and my grandmother would drive approximately 50 miles every morning to work on the house until it was finished. At my mother's request, he built the cabinets in the kitchen out of the wood from an old barn. Only Papa could do that. Papa took pride in himself and in what he did, and that pride always showed in his craftsmanship. What I am most thankful for is that Papa and my grandmother raised my dad. While growing up, one thing I remember about my dad is that he never lost his temper. Now, I didn't say he never got mad, but he never lost control. I believe he got that level-headed nature from Papa. I remember one particular time when Papa took us fishing. When he put the fishing boat in the water, he would always let me start the boat and drive it over to the dock while he parked the truck. I remember just a little excited, and when I turned the key in the ignition, I actually broke the key. Here I was, dead in the water, and Papa walks up to the dock. I yelled to him that the key broke, but he thought I meant that one of the keys had just gotten bent. He yelled back to use one of the other ignition keys on the ring. At that point, I further explained that I had actually broken the key off in the ignition and it was stuck in there. I could see his face drop, but he didn't get mad or yell. He just sighed. "Oh, Joey." When I finally paddled the boat over to the dock, he still couldn't get the broken key out of the ignition, but he figured out a way to use a small blade on his pocket knife to turn the ignition, and we were on our way. Vintage Papa, he could always find a solution. I am grateful that Papa instilled in his son the values and principles that are so important. As I get older, I realize that those are the same values my parents tried to instill in me, and I realize the role my grandparents played in that process. Papa is gone now, but one physical reminder I have of him are my own hands. You see, I inherited the same big hands he had. Just one glance at my hands reminds me of my heritage and how important it is to me. And although the visual image is not as easy as looking down at my own hands, the mental image of another pair of hands is very powerful. Just one glance at his nail-scarred hands gives me the same feeling. I know from whose family I come, and I know to whom I belong. It is those hands that often remind me of my eternal heritage, and one day I know those hands will lead me home. Thank you for joining me as we have read through the Andy Griffiths show and this devotion time. Thank you.